Hello and welcome to the political arena, where we unpack the big political stories shaping South Africa's future. I'm Hajra Omarjee, and today we discuss a brutal power struggle brewing in the halls of South African politics. It's striking a chord of deja vu among seasoned ANC observers. Having witnessed the downfall of Mbeki in 2007 and the fractured high-stakes rise of Jacob Zuma, the ANC once again finds itself at a critical crossroads, this time over the ownership of Eskom's transmission assets. President Cyril Ramaphosa is betting that a modernized, investor-friendly grid will define his legacy. His rivals, though, are betting that South Africans will remember it as the moment the family silver started leaving the building. Joining me to unpack the state of the nation are my colleagues Lizeka Tandwa and Thando Maeko. Welcome to the political arena. Thando, is Ramaphosa trying to privatize through the back door?
That's a very interesting question, because I don't think the president is pushing anything that has not been agreed to by all parties. All parties agree that South Africa needs a massive build of transmission lines at a cost of around 440 billion rand in order to spur South Africa's generation capacity. I think a generation capacity of 105 gigawatts. And up to 2039. But how we get there is what the proxy battle is about. You have on one side the electricity minister and the Eskom board, and then you have on another side Ramaphosa and the presidency, which at this point in time seems like how South Africa gets to that point of the build and the ownership of the transmission lines, there's a divergence. So the convergence is where that South Africa needs these lines, there needs massive investment, but the divergence is the pace in which the build happens and the ownership of those assets.
Lizeka, I'm going to get to you in a moment on the various proxy battles we see in the build-up to the ANC's national conference. But Thando, we agreed on this roadmap that the transmission company would be separate from Eskom when we were knee-deep in 12 hours of load shedding. The electricity minister was brought in once the roadmap had been passed. That's Ramaphosa. Eskom's board had also agreed to this roadmap. So Ramaphosa is just not deferring to the roadmap that everyone had agreed to. So why is there so much noise around rejection of it and saying this would be the death nail of Eskom at this moment?
I mean, when you listen to the board chairperson of Eskom, Teto Nyati, and the electricity minister, it's about the pace at which the roadmap would be implemented. So there's no pushback against setting up the transmission company, which has already been set up. There's a board, there's a CEO, but separating Eskom from its transmission assets when Eskom, so right now, its balance sheet relies so much of the revenue from that, that's what the death knell is. So right now, I mean, Eskom municipalities or Eskom are over 250 billion rand.
Yeah.
That's a disaster to the Eskom balance sheet. If you take away its ability to generate revenue from transmission, then Eskom has basically no revenue generation, and you might as well not have an Eskom.
Lizeka, I would assume South Africans are a bit lost because Thando's outlined what this will do to Eskom. But we are also just over a year before the ANC goes to a national conference and a change of guard is expected. Ramaphosa is expected to step down as ANC president. And the amount of noise that this decision has created, on one hand, I would blame on government comms because they didn't have a communication strategy before making such a big announcement. But on the other hand, we saw the WhatsApp groups way before it hit social media, and the outrage against Ramaphosa was coming from ANC factions.
Well, I think when it comes to the ANC and its alliance, the tripartite alliance, it's sort of like it's more like the evil word privatization, and that's what will always.
And Mbeki never dared to privatize Eskom,
and that's what they will always push back on.
Yeah.
But in terms of when we settled on this topic for political arena, and I called several NEC members to find out from them if indeed this was going to become the proxy war going into 2027, and I called some COSATU people as well, the leadership within COSATU. What I've found is that if there is going to be a proxy war, it's going to be led by COSATU. It's not going to be led within the ANC.
Okay.
The person who should be championing this going into 2027 is the person who stands to gain the most from Cyril leaving his position, and that would be Paul Mashatile. But we've seen very little of Paul Mashatile. Maybe Thando might disagree with me. We've seen very little in terms of him being active when it comes to the ANC, and even in government to some degree in terms of pushing back from policy agreements or policy arrangements by the president. He's done nothing to kind of curtail the powers of Fikile Mbalula, or as far as we can see. So I wonder if the ANC can take up this fight, especially given that the people who actually have the capability of taking up this fight are in government with Cyril Ramaphosa. And like Thando has said, this unbundling is not new. It was announced a couple of years ago. It's a matter of pace now. Now, the person who I think I'm going to be interested in seeing is Hoshienzo Sputla Ramaphosa, who also wants, who also has intentions of being part of the top 7. Yeah. Will this be a defining moment for him? Because will he be seen as someone who stands up against Cyril Ramaphosa, and
will people rally around him?
Yeah, and the so-called privatization. Or will he be a person who, toes the line and goes along with what the president is saying?
Thando, we already seen signs of that from Hoshienzo Ramaphosa. We call him Sputla. But we already seen an anti-Ramaphosa, anti-Eskom privatization sentiment. People rally around Sputla. What do you know about that?
I know that Sputla has the Eskom board on his side. It's very important that he has the Eskom board and the executive on his side as a political head of the electricity ministry. He also has NUM on his side, which is an affiliate of COSATU. And like Lizeka said, that if there's anyone that's going to take it up more than the ANC, it's definitely the unions, because they also have lots to lose from this. I mean, NUM came out with a statement, I think last week, saying that the whole matter will cause job losses within Eskom, and basically taking the side of the Eskom board. It's very rare that you see unions taking the side of the employer. But in this case, Ramaphosa has the side of the unions, and also is on his side is also the Eskom board. But who's not on his side is big business. Big business is not on the side of the Eskom board at this current juncture. And you see every day, the Eskom chairperson, Mteto Nyati, is on social media defending the decision of the board and the executive to say, please, let's rethink this matter of just giving away, like you said, the family silver at this point, because the family stands to lose more than it will gain at this point.
So, Lizeka, I've always criticized President Cyril Ramaphosa. I've said that Mandela, Jacob Zuma, Thabo Mbeki, agree or disagree, they had an economic policy they pushed. And I've always criticized Ramaphosa for not being decisive around economic policy. Now that he has been decisive, and we're seeing him taking more decisive decision around the issue of reform and how the state will be reformed, largely because politics is the art of what is possible. Mbeki had a choice. He did not have a choice. We were knee deep in 12 hours of load shedding. But we've also fed into these proxy battles within the ANC, within COSATU, within the SACP, and then a new leadership get elected, and you realize those proxy battles were never genuine. It was all just about capturing the heart and soul of the ANC, and that leading to state power.
I agree completely that it's likely not going to, if they actually it becomes something. It's likely not going to produce anything outside of just the wars, internal wars within the ANC, which is quite disheartening, given that we are where we are in terms of our economy and the ANC where it is when you're looking at the polling that just came out from SRF, which states that the ANC is below 30% nationally and the ANC in Johannesburg is going to be under 20%. So I don't expect that there is someone who has the imagination, and that's the problem with the ANC, is that we haven't seen someone who has the imagination in terms of how to turn around, to correct the trajectory that we are in economically.
I'm glad you raised Johannesburg, because Thando and I have been speaking a lot about this. Does Ramaphosa allow state-owned enterprises or municipalities like the city of Johannesburg to collapse, and then so it is handed to white business or the Democratic Alliance, instead of intervening in time for there to be significant changes? Because where Ramaphosa has intervened in eThekwini, it's perhaps helped him fight off MK's battle for eThekwini, but why not intervene earlier in Eskom? He was the deputy president since 2014, and in the city of Johannesburg a lot sooner than what I would describe as Joburg as a failed state at this point.
I would say Ramaphosa has intervened. I mean, the establishment of electricity ministry is part of the interventions. Allowing private sector into South Africa's electricity grid is also part of the interventions. The thing about it now with the ANC and like what we're speaking now with proxy wars, I would say that the electricity minister is one of those ANC successes within Ramaphosa's leadership. And when the ANC goes out to the people and says, no, we've done so much for you, they will reference what Sputla has done. I mean, people right now, South Africa right now can go to their homes and switch on the electricity and electricity will be there.
Yeah.
Previously, that wasn't...
You're crediting that to Sputla.
And Ramaphosa, because there wouldn't be a Sputla and electricity minister without Ramaphosa. So jointly, they worked together. And that was part of the interventions in time. Right now, we see South Africa is, the growth is projected, I think 1.1 this year, but it is projected to grow much more over the next coming years. And in order to feed that growth, you need a stable electricity grid, you need reliable electricity. And that's
but the electricity price hasn't decreased.
Yeah, the electricity price as well. Exactly, electricity price hasn't decreased. So the thing about it is that if South Africa grows at a faster pace now, even Joburg grows at a faster pace, you need reliable electricity.
The ANC, Lizeka, got its highest numbers at the polls in 1999, when the lived experience of South Africans had changed significantly from 1994 to 1999. We've not seen the price of electricity decrease. That's largely because of Eskom's debt burden, and that's why we've seen Treasury push municipalities to pay off the Eskom debt. But I think despite the signals of reform from Ramaphosa, I think he's sticking to the roadmap. But I think the ANC is still going to be punished in this election. I haven't forgotten sitting in 12 hours of load shedding.
And it's not enough. And I mean, for someone like Thando, for instance, who understands policy, who understands what the president is trying to, the end game, that person could perhaps have sympathy towards Ramaphosa and in terms of his reform agenda. But when you speak to Ugogo Dlamini, as Thuli Madonsela would like to reference all the time, that person is looking at bread and butter issues. Yeah. The fact of the matter is, I mean, I pay my electricity has ballooned since the time of load shedding. And it might be that I do have electricity every day, but the reality is now I'm looking at something else.
Yeah, we're suffocated by the cost of living, having to pay for the corruption still. Yeah.
So it's very hard for South Africans to kind of identify and understand the projects that projects and the reforms that the president is trying to undertake when we are sitting with a situation where we are our earnings go into the electricity expenses.
And I'm not surprised by the SRF poll, which says the ANC could get 18% in the city of Johannesburg. Joburg is a failed state, is a failed African state. The potholes, the robots, the electricity prices, it just gets passed on to us, and we've got to deal with it.
Interestingly enough, though, that poll doesn't mention that electricity is one of the issues that will come up, or that where ANC will be a casualty. It mentions other things: service delivery, like Lizeka said, the bread and butter issues, the water, refuse collection, unemployment.
And we get very upset when you mess with our roads.
Exactly, the roads, that will be the ANC's death knell. It also goes back to what I'm saying, like the provision of electricity and how Eskom has been able to turn around is one of those things that the ANC, when it goes to voters, will reference when it goes to voters and say, hey, please look at us, we're able to turn the electricity situation around. But like Lizeka said, for Ugogo Dlamini, who doesn't know or who's not fully aware of Ramaphosa's end goal and why the electricity bill all of a sudden is so high, that is something that the ANC needs to explain. And I think it also goes back to what you were saying about government communications and how...
Please make that point.
Yeah, government communications has really been weakened in explaining just the simple issues, like why has the electricity price gone so high? Will it ever come down again? I mean, you can always bring in the regulator, NERSA, to explain. You can bring in the municipalities, but I think it really has. I mean, sending out a statement and thinking people will understand the media statement is not, I think it only is 50% of the job done.
I'm going to make this point to government before I ask Lizeka to answer the final question of the show. A president signing a bill like land expropriation or NHI, or deciding on Eskom's transmission company, or a family address on how some are trying to destabilize South Africa through xenophobic violence. Those messaging and decisions by the president largely failed because it was not attached with a communications plan by government. There is an army of ministers and spokespeople that should have been lined up to explain what the president was trying to say. In the absence of that, the national conversation is being led by those that oppose what Ramaphosa say and does. And I'd like to make that point as we end the show with Lizeka. Lizeka, a lot of people I'm speaking to in Johannesburg are so hurtful with the ANC that for the first time, they're saying to me they're thinking about voting DA. I would argue a lot of MK's vote, MK has been in shambles, and a lot of the DA's vote is going to be an anti-ANC protest vote. We saw that with COPE, we saw that with EFF, and we saw that with MK. What do you think?
I think if you look at the ANC and in terms of how seriously it takes this election, it's quite worrisome. If you look at, for instance, Helen Zille, when did she announce? When was she announced? In October, I believe, last year.
Yeah. Almost
she's had almost a year to kind of go and campaign. And we don't only see her during registration weekends, which is what we've seen with the ANC. The ANC is only seen, or the president is only seen with ANC regalia on registration weekends. And I think we've had 2 or 3 registration weekends. That says a lot. When was the last time you saw Tata Morero either...
I've seen him on clean-up campaigns.
But when have you seen him talking about strategies to correct what is going on in Johannesburg? He might not be the candidate, the final candidate, the winning candidate.
Well, personally, I think the ANC is trying to lose Joburg.
It could be. It could be, I mean, it's shocking for me. Say what you want about the SRF and its agenda, its ideology, who it's leaning and it's affiliated to, and many will say that it's affiliated with the DA, considering the people who actually run it. But the reality is SRF was spot on in 2024, so you don't want to dismiss them. You don't want to dismiss their numbers. It's quite telling if the MK party, which has had instability and has a chronic instability and has changed this revolving door of leadership, and we've seen now, is only 5% or 5 margins less than the ANC in a poll that just came out now. That's shocking for the ANC. They should be worried. We should have had mayoral candidates by now. We should have been able to they should have been able to be on the ground by now. We should have been able to dissect what they can and cannot do. They can't simply just give us a Frank Chikane, who is an elderly person as well, just like Helen Zille, who's an elderly person, and think that because of his track record, his previous track record, that we will stand behind the ANC, we will vote for the ANC. So the ANC is in a very precarious position, but it's self-inflicted.
And let's not forget when the ANC did badly in the 2016 local government elections, that was the beginning of the end for former President Jacob Zuma. That's all we have time for in this episode of The Political Arena. A big thank you to my colleagues Lizeka Tandwa and Thando Maeko for their insights and analysis. As the battle over Eskom's transmission assets unfolds, the question no longer is only about South Africa's electricity grid and how it should be structured, but is it the start of a proxy battle in the ANC's next succession battle, as well as a look towards Ramaphosa's political legacy, the future of the ANC, and growing tensions within the party, and how it will impact your vote come the municipal poll. I'm Hajra Omarjee. Until next time, goodbye.